So maybe to flip it back on scientists who are, maybe they're the materialist atheist scientists out there. There's some famous ones, you know, now in the new atheism, as it's called, with Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and others like Sam Harris. And I guess you would maybe flip it back on that crowd and say, so here's the really mysterious parts of science. Like here's an example or two where science bumps into like a really big mystery for which you is like, and here's God, like this is directly pointing me. But what's their explanation of those things? Or is there no explanation? Where are the mystery boundaries of like science as you see it?
Yeah. I mean, so that there's various, I mean, I think there's still some mystery around like the origin of life. I think they do a great job through evolution and other things of being able to explain once you have the first life, how we got to it. There have been some experiments, that make them think like, yeah, possibly with just these perfect conditions, it might be able to spark a way to develop life. But like, to me, like the Big Bang is a huge one, something that I know a lot of Christians are afraid of. And I still remember when I was for my very first teaching job, I was applying it was for an astronomy physics teaching position. And they asked us, it's kind of a mean teaching prompt. They gave us 10 minutes to teach, and we had to teach the Big Bang Theory in 10 minutes. It's like the Big Bang Theory and the history of the beginning of time or something like crazy.
I was actually hoping you're going to do that now.
Yeah. Here's 10 minutes about, and so like, but I remember like, I was super nervous about it. It's like, as a Christian, am I going to like say things I don't believe? Like, am I being forced inside a secular school and like all this stuff? And then I started diving into it, and I was like, it was amazing. If you look, it's one piece of scientific evidence that says, here's a finite time in the past that the universe began. It sprang into existence out of nothing. And like that to me is like points to a creator. And that's where like you have to get back far enough. And if you talk with, scientists from an atheistic worldview, like they are struggling with the same thing. Like, where did that universe come from? We say it came from God. And then their response is, well, then where did God come from? And we're like, he wasn't created. He's eternal, But then we ask them, where did the universe come from? And like a lot of times our response is, well, for me, it's easier to accept. It's a less complicated solution that it just came out of nothing than it came from this intelligent, creative, personal God, And that's where you'll see and hear sometimes that be a response. And then I think going kind of the other way, as you zoom forward into like quantum mechanics, is really fascinating and challenging. I'm no expert on it, but as we start to see this fact that there's like this quantum uncertainty, and that like observation seems to affect like the results of our experiments, it's like shaking the foundations of what we understand science to be, of how things act at a very small scale. And like, as we get into things like trying to understand and postulate about string theory, about multiverses, these are all very complicated ideas that are very uncertain, and they beg so many questions. Like, how is it and why is it that my interaction with an experiment affects the results? How does our observation collapse probability functions? And as good scientists, like we can describe it, right? We've created models that, there's this probability function, and the electron is moving in a probability wave. It's not in any one spot at one time. The experiments confirm that. And then once I make an observation, I collapse its probability function and it chooses one point. Okay, cool. But like that, like, how is that even possible? How does observation, what does it mean to make an observation? There's plenty of debate among scientists about that. But like, why does an observation change the results? How is it that the world exists as probability functions at the smallest scale? It raises a ton of questions. That idea is what sparks some of the theories about the multiverse. Like, well, maybe when you collapse probability function, there's just a different universe when it comes into the other option or the other options. And so that's why I'm just creating a new branch off of the possibilities. Or there's a creative God that actually gave us free will, and that free will is written into the laws of nature. I mean, for me, that aspect of science, which again, without more background, I hope I'm not being confusing to you and the listeners, but like that truth that there is probability functions, that observation affects results, to me points to, again, a God who created a world with free will as part of it. And this is just it manifesting itself physically. But again, for an atheistic worldview person, they'd, I'm sure, have another explanation and scoff at what I'm saying right now. But it does ask and beg a lot of bigger questions than science currently is able to explain. That doesn't mean it won't change. We as scientists are good at constantly answering questions we thought unanswerable with increased technology, but right now it's a pretty confusing one.
Wow, it's amazing. And it invites this idea that the seen and the unseen are actually more closely related, and science can actually bring us closer to the mystery of existence and our interaction with the world.